Hey YouTube, it's Lexi here. Today I'm going to share with you a poem that I wrote last Thursday at the L3 Writers Conference. Holly Painter did a workshop and we got a chance to write poetry, spoken word of course, and we got to read it out loud if we chose to. So that was probably the most terrifying moment of my life, reading a spoken word poem in front of the most inspirational spoken word poet I can think of. But I was really excited to read it as well. And this is the poem that I read revised now because we didn't have much time to write and stuff. But I hope that you guys will like it. And I just wanted to say, if you don't know who Holly Painter is, please go and check out her YouTube account because she's honestly amazing. And she's been so inspiring to me and in a lot of the decisions I'm being forced to make in my life right now. So this one is inspired by Holly. I grew up in a house made from brown bricks, a house that had already began crumbling back into the particles of dust from which it was created. I grew up in an orange sundress on her back deck picking wild berries. I grew up in black overalls dusted with flour, watching as she cracked eggs into a clear bowl. I grew up being chased around a lawn full of dandelions by my dogs. And these dandelions, they weren't leaves. To me, they were flowers. I grew up just a happy little girl who was dressed in shiny shoes and sparkling hair clips, watching the exact same movies as every other kid did on those lazy Saturday nights when she was tuckered out after chasing my little legs up and down the pathways behind her house. I grew up to the sound of Elvis Presley, to that sweet smell of cinnamon buns cooking in the oven, to the muddy trails of adventure tracked through her clean house by the dog's feet. I grew up with mosquito bites on the backs of my legs, scrapes and bruises on my knees, falling from the monkey bars and even out of trees. I grew up determined to be more than she already knew I could be. On the weekends, I grew up with her. But most days, I grew up being chased by the enraged ghosts that rolled up their lips when they had to tell me more than once, "Clean your room." I grew up to the rhythm of all the objects they hurled or the doors they slammed. I grew up being afraid to come downstairs because what if they yelled at me again? And my parents weren't the casual type. It never would have been acceptable to just go with the flow. Heaven help you if you argue topics of gender, sexuality, or even how to dust a shelf. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think I ever used that phrase, actually. I'm pretty sure they had their hands so far down my throat, closing my vocal cords, saying, "Don't speak." And despite all of my efforts, all of the A's in the top right-hand corners, all the poems I read to them in my living room, and the stories that I wrote for them, I knew that they were never listening. Because they would have picked up on it sooner. My stories were different. They had a change in the plot, a character role swap, and an element of surprise. I know they weren't listening because they never even lifted their eyes from the computer on the desk, the magazine in hand. Hell, even the cat got more eye contact. And so I grew up on the phone with my grandma. In laughter or tears, when I was sick or just being silly. If I had a bad day at school or I'd made a brand new friend. If I was holding a phone, you can be sure she was on the other end. And all the stories they read me, all the books they made up for me, and all the movies that they showed me depicted love as a prince coming to his princess. On a white horse, on a flying carpet, but it was always a prince. And I grew up in a mind that really questioned the need for it to be a prince and a princess. I always thought, what if the princess found her own princess and the prince just fell off a horse somewhere? But they were always there to tell me, "You'll find a boy someday." I grew up hearing these words repeated like the boy in your third grade class with a stutter. Hearing them repeated like the song you heard yesterday and can't get over. Repeated and repeated and repeated. But I grew up in a house made from brown bricks, a house that had already began to crumble into the particles of dust from which it was created, in a house where being gay was not an option, simply not how proper people behaved. It was just a phase. I must have gotten it from saturating my brain with too much of this Allen stuff, because God forbid I be the princess who said no to the prince. I grew up in the shadows of the boys who doted on the boys who played football, and the shadows of parents who crushed every dream I ever dreamt like an old can of Coke. And I grew up thinking being gay was bad. Because my family changed the channel when two boys kissed on TV, and they all gagged mockingly at the two girls holding hands in the mall. Every night when I went to bed, I thought, this is my family. They must love me. But I'd wake up in the morning questioning the whole idea of them loving me because I didn't think they really knew me. I grew up in a house made from brown bricks, a house that had already began to crumble back into the particles of dust from which it was created. The very same as the heterosexual kid down the street. And I'm sorry that you don't like it, but I'm not going to apologize for the fact I wasn't comfortable in the closet anymore because I grew up.